Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back from lunch. We have two very exciting fireside chats back-to-back on overcoming obstacles, and I think you'll be fascinated to hear people's stories and some takeaways. I'm Steve Eskenazi, and I co-chair the Entrepreneurship track here at TiE, and it's my pleasure to introduce Yogi, Chugh, and Ramona Pierson for the first fireside chat. And if you do have questions, please just text capital A2 to the number that you see on the screen. It will prompt you back, and then you can just ask your question from there. I'll turn it over to Yogi now. Yogi?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Ramona, obstacles. Your whole life, academically gifted, great education, recruited by the Marines, the fittest Marine. You're building algorithms to minimize collateral damage for the Defense Department. One fine day, life takes an interesting turn. Share with us.
So, unbeknownst to me, I had gone out for a run, and at the same time I crossed the street, a drunk driver had intersected with me. I ended up falling underneath the car. My left foot got caught up in the wheel well and spun the leg around. So that impact changed my life, and in so many different ways. It brought me back on the path I was supposed to be on. I just didn't know what that path was going to be. And so many people along the way, and I think about all the people in this room, all the entrepreneurs, all the innovators. It's you guys who actually created the opportunity for me to live and to be the person I am today. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the innovations that came along just in time to save me.
You know, Ramona, your story is one of perseverance, patience. Modern science, technology redefined your own evolution as a human being. Those metamorphoses also formed the creation of your neuroscientist, the technologist in you, to innovate. Synaptic Mesh and Ceclara are just two examples of companies. How did your own formative experience of what you went through, life-threatening at best, how did those companies come into existence?
So my path began during this accident, and when the hospitals gave up on me, they decided that I was never going to recover, that it was going to be too expensive to continue to house me, so the best thing they did was give up on me. I landed in a senior citizens home, and at the senior citizens home, they didn't know that they should give up on me. So what was beautiful about that, they taught me two things. One, you only need one person to believe in you to succeed, and they never gave up in me, and I had like 100 grandparents who focused only on me, so I had no choice but to succeed. Number two, they taught me the power of personalization. So, and in that, it inspired my whole life's trajectory to try to figure out how to replicate the experience I had with different senior citizens focused on different aspects of my life. And so that I could learn to speak, to write, to do Braille again. And sometimes they taught me, they were the originators of moving fast and breaking things. And so when I had to relearn how to cross a street, they were the ones that said, just put your cane out there, and if a car hits it, don't cross the street. So after breaking many canes, I realized that this should be brought into my entrepreneurial life. And so I brought that in. The other thing is never, ever thinking that once you're on a path, that's a true path. That you have to be an innovator and being willing to take risks, to be able to pivot when the data and the information shows you that you have to redefine things.
You know, Ramona, you always defied the status quo, and many people have said that your previous company, Synaptic Mesh, and now Ceclara. In technology, I think CEOs often are confronted with a dilemma when they start a company. Do you disrupt, or do you simply solve a problem? Many have said that not only are you disrupting, but you're also solving a big problem. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, absolutely. You know, when I started Ceclara, I started it on a vision to change how the world learns. And when we started the company, in order to get funding, I had to prove ourselves out. And we ended up being very successful selling into ministries. So we've been selling our product into Australia, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Singapore. So what people thought was going to be a difficult market to sell into and succeed, we proved ourselves, and our algorithms have been proving itself. But then I realized we were not on the vision. We weren't succeeding on what we started the company at. So in order to actually disrupt learning, I had to decide and bring my team along with me, and also bring our investors along with me and go, look, we started this company to disrupt learning and to democratize knowledge. And if we keep going down the direction we are, we're going to continue to keep a broken system in place. And so I decided that we needed to pivot and to focus on really bringing the disruption so that all people have access to knowledge. And when you think about it, the sum of all human knowledge can be accessed by an iPhone or an Android. So why not make that knowledge accessible to everybody? And why not personalize all of that content that's out there? I think we're creating 5 exabytes of content every 2 days. And we don't need another publisher, but what we do need is intelligence so that we can organize that knowledge and deliver it at the right place, at the right time, inside or outside of institutions.
You know, Ramona, one of the biggest challenges that we've heard or read of is there's a great sense of impatience from investors, often enough from employees and fellow executives. Patience can be daunting at times. When you're trying to do something that is fundamentally altering the landscape and challenging something as fundamental as education, how do you deal with that impatience? How do you deal with the patience where people are coming back and saying, Ramona, you're ahead of your time? How do you deal with that?
No, I'd say that when I was a blind person, it wasn't as dark as being a CEO. That some of my darkest moments have been spent as a CEO because you have to deal with those difficulties. And it's interesting, I was creating an article or a collection inside of our product around entrepreneurship for this talk. And I saw this one article that said, Silicon Valley is failing the world. And it reinforced why we are doing what we're doing. And it was interesting because it was tackling the fact that investors are going after the quick app, that they only want to invest 2 million or 3 million, and they want the unicorn. They want the WhatsApp. They want to have a multi-billion-dollar, hey, flip into an engagement, instead of thinking about, wow, we have a water crisis, we have environmental issues, we have global warming, we have everything that is pointing to the fact that we need education, we need to democratize learning. And so how do you then change the investment structure so that people are actually going back and building real platforms that solve real world problems? And so it became a conversation that I've had to have with our investors, and to be insightful enough to identify the investors that are really looking to disrupt technology to actually solve big real world problems and not just sell an app to Facebook or an app to Google.
You know, one of the questions that just came in from the audience was, every single day when you're trying to democratize education and you're dealing with teachers and you're teaching with administrators and you're teaching with nations and sometimes states, it requires almost like pushing an elephant down a needle. It's an obstacle where, as a CEO of a company, you're basically trying to convince the world that your solution is the next big thing. How do you convince teams of people in your organization to continue to have the same passion as you do?
You know what I remind people is, what do you do most of the day? You search. And when you search, you're getting a lot of lines of information or content coming to you. So you're learning, you're going through, you're synthesizing information, And then you're trying to bring that, analyze it, and turn it into some new form of knowledge. And so every day you're learning. And so what if you had a product or a tool that actually allowed you to connect with experts that can help scaffold your learning? And what if you could actually get the content that has been vetted and organized by experts in their field? Imagine how powerful it would be to have this living textbook that follows you, or having a living mentor that could connect with you from around the world. We have 3 billion people connected on the internet. Now we just need to organize them and their expertise around one form of knowledge that they're great at to allow us to plug into them. And that scales. And we don't need to wait for bureaucracies to figure out how to bring learning to all their people. We can bring learning to everybody.
Ramona, that brings to the next point. The CEO's life is a difficult life sometimes. And they say that a CEO's life is to not only have the big vision, but evangelize, articulate, take the hassles out, pivot along with the team, build the mind share. You also transformed your company from Ceclara from a business-to-business focus, which still continues to be at the forefront, but you're also focusing on business to consumer. When was that decision made and why?
You know, we've been selling into nations, and then we started selling into enterprise. So enterprise companies like Genentech and other pharmaceutical companies are a learning company, and they need to learn rapidly to reduce the cost to bringing new molecular IP to the market or drugs. And so we saw how powerful our product was there, but then we realized we were leaving out this incredible opportunity of allowing people to have a portable identity that becomes sort of their digital identity, their digital learning profile that shows their competencies, how they've impacted an organization. Imagine the power of bringing your identity from one place to another. Artists are able to bring their portfolio, or designers can bring their portfolio and show you, but what do knowledge workers bring with them? So then we realized how powerful it would be if you could create, or we could allow people to bring their portable identity along with them out into the real world and then on to their next job. And so that is why we realized we needed to pivot, that we needed to have the confidence in bringing the ability for people to own their own data and their own knowledge wherever they go, so that their knowledge doesn't just disappear when they quit a job or leave a job.
Pastor Ramona, we just have a few more moments, but the question about ecosystem. There are many people who come back and try to democratize education, but from a very different approach. Coursera, EdCoast, Khosla, they're working on defining education, Khan Academy. You've always talked about the value of the ecosystem, even if it's contrarian, even if they're competing. Do you believe that competing or collaborating with an ecosystem is in the larger interest of the larger good that you're hoping to do by pushing the envelope to re-change education as we know it?
Absolutely. What I believe in is there isn't one approach to anything, and that's what the grandparents at the senior citizen home taught me, is that we have to have a hermeneutical perspective. Everybody has a piece of the pie, everybody has the knowledge, and it's going to take an ecosystem to solve a lot of the big real world problems, and all of us learn differently. What is disruptive is thinking about a larger ecosystem and focusing on your core competencies as a company. So Coursera is creating great content. Wouldn't it be great if we can pull that content and deliver it to people based on their cognitive graph and anticipating what they're going to need to learn next? So our algorithms are constantly looking at predictive analytics and transformative analytics. So how can we help you transform your life? So we can grab in any content. Where we are disrupting is when publishers put their content in us, we believe in a collective intelligence. So instead of me defining your pathway and outcome, every individual should uncap their learning. In personalization, in my last company, I made the error of personalizing around an adaptive learning program that was based on publishers defining the outcome. But then we start to define an outcome for jobs that won't exist in 10 years. So how do you open up the system, maximize the potential of every person, create a collective intelligence so that you get to true democracy of intelligence, and allow people to share that so that we actually allow you to invent the future jobs in the world?
Well, Ramona, that has been inspiring. There's so much more to the story of Ramona Pierson that can never be covered in 15 minutes. The personal stories, if you ever get a chance, do search on Ramona Pierson Ceclara. Ramona, we're at the end of our time, but I do want to provide you this opportunity to come and talk about whatever's on your mind, to share with this audience whatever we don't seem to have covered, because there's so much about Ramona, there's so much about Ceclara, there's so much about what you're trying to accomplish. The next minute is all yours.
So what I think is important in the takeaway is that we all need to be risk takers to be able to create the vision. We need to have, patient capital to be able to realize our dreams, to solve these big real world problems for our kids. But one of the most important takeaways is the thank yous to all the innovators out there. So when I was in the hospital, when I landed there was a doctor that went contrary to what the laws were. So the FDA was telling all doctors they can't put me into a drug-induced coma. They shouldn't reduce my body temperature to 95 degrees. If that doctor didn't break the law and do that, I wouldn't be here today. So by doing that, he preserved the brain tissue in my head so that I could be a person who is an innovator, a person who remembers her name, a person who can challenge and be a disruptor. So I owe the world a lot. I owe the people that are nameless heroes in my life a lot. And the only way I can do that is to really inspire people to take those risks, to know that they're innovators and they're seeing the future, maybe ahead of people, but they have to trust their heart and know they're doing the right thing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. With that, our time is up. A big round of applause for Ramona Pierson. Thank you.